Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Let's take you to one of our top stories now. The presidency has hit out at the treatment of security teams and journalists by Polish authorities. That's after they have been prevented from disembarking a plane in Warsaw. Now, presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says officials are engaging their Polish counterparts to find a solution. President Cyril Ramaphosa, meanwhile, has arrived safely in Ukraine. He's there with other African leaders in a bid to mediate the war. Let's now bring in political analyst Sipho Seepe to just give us more information. Of course, Professor Seepe, for South Africans, for instance, maybe we're a despondent nation, but, is it untoward that we're asking ourselves questions around what's happening in Poland with the journalist being stuck, his own security personnel being stuck in Warsaw while he's in Ukraine? We're asking ourselves, is this yet another bad planning situation by government?
Oh, certainly. That is actually bad planning. Countries do not go out of their way to offend, especially at the level of diplomacy. And as some people put it, diplomacy is really the art and science and the means with which organizations, individuals try to safeguard their interest while they're keeping peaceful relations. And this is why we have ambassadors, we have representatives. So if you're going to embark on a mission, you need to make sure that the people or countries that you're going to be passing through are aware, and you have your own representative actively involved so that you avoid this level of embarrassment. But when there is a poor planning and there is a poor intelligence, then you end up in a situation where South Africans are at the moment, because this incident could have been avoided with the proper preparation and also engagement that must continue diplomatically between the countries that you're going to be passing through and where you're actually going. And what you see here, our guys read it as the deliberate sabotage. But if you listen to what is required of them, it is not something that one will say it's unexpected. So here again, because we are more into playing to the gallery, we fail to do even the most basic of things.
And I mean, we're getting news just coming in from international media, including the BBC, for instance, Prof, that there's been yet another attack on Russia, airstrikes apparently, or rather in Kyiv, airstrikes apparently there in Ukraine, particularly in Kyiv. This is where these African leaders have landed. If this is indeed something that is proven to be true, what does it say then about the respect or maybe lack thereof that President Vladimir Putin could have about these particular peace talks?
Well, the problem with this form of engagement, and normally you try to find a place that is somehow neutral. But when you have a war situation, those who are engaged in war try to take advantage. If you are sleeping, then they are attacked. So the issue here is that even though there is this attempt to have a discussion around peace, there has not been a cessation of hostilities. Remember, every time you have negotiations, then there must be an agreement by the warring parties that they were going to give peace a chance. We don't see that both Ukraine and Russia have reached that level where they will say there's cessation of hostilities. So for as long as there's no cessation of hostilities and argument around that, you'll find these sporadic attacks. And if that is true, it is unfortunate because our president have decided to rush to both two countries to show that they're more concerned about what is happening there. And of course, there are people, other Africans, who are asking whether they shouldn't be prioritizing the wars that are taking place in Africa, because Africa is always in a permanent state of conflict. There are about 7 countries at the moment where there is no peace in Africa, whether you talk about Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, South Sudan, Libya, Mali. Then you also have terrorist, what is described as terrorism that is taking place through organizations like Boko Haram. All these are the issues that are perennial and ongoing in Africa. And people are saying, shouldn't our president also be showing such great interest in the resolution of our permanent and almost ceaseless conflict in the continent?
Just lastly, Prof, in terms of what you said earlier, which I found very interesting, our government has been found wanting here and there in particular cases where, because it fears persecution, and I guess because we have a constitution that works in this country and South Africans have opinions, it works too quickly to do something. I mean, 120 people in such a huge SAA bus, the presidency might come back and say, we are not the ones that confirm whether or not we have been given authority to be in particular airspace. I'm sure you heard about them circling around the Mediterranean Sea, particularly in Italy, for about an hour because they didn't have permission to be there. So the presidency might come back and say, but that's not what we do. So this also is something that shows a lack of, just wanting to do things so quickly that you make silly mistakes like this, isn't it?
Well, sometimes you'll find that presidents in Africa would rather divert attention from their own internal problems and challenges, and so that they are seen to be doing something. And this is something that we seem to be very good at in South Africa, and also probably the continent. I mean, today, young people are marching because they're raising issues that have to do with this country. And if you go to other countries, you'll find that the president will always say, we put our countries first. And the question that one must ask is that, are there not enough problems that these leaders who have decided to go to Russia, are they not facing those challenges? Because I can assure you that even America has its internal challenges. It will make sure that those come first. So the issue is that aren't we putting other people's interests as opposed to addressing our own challenges? Whether the mission succeeds in Ukraine, our problems will continue to be here. But it does not mean that we should not participate. But we must also understand our location in the world. I mean, Africa as a whole, its contribution to the GDP of the world, global GDP, is only less than 3%. And we are a nation and a continent. We're nations where we are known for our poverty, for lack of development, etc. So the issue is, what propels our leaders to put aside these greater challenges? Yes, we can understand that we are also victims of that war, in a sense that we are importers of grain from Ukraine. And but the issue is that why don't we allow people in Europe to resolve their European issues? And we embark largely on our own issues. I mean, you're talking about the displacement. One of the spokesperson of the president was talking about people that are displaced. In Africa, you're talking about displacement of more than 1 million people, even hundreds of thousands that are dying. And we would like to see the same energy. But as I say, some of this escapades is simply to try to...
I guess it's that issue of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like you said, we do have to make peace with many of the countries around the world because of our trade and just wanting to be able to have good relations. But thank you so much for speaking to us and giving us your analysis. Political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe, speaking to us there. Of course, this story is still developing, and you'll find more information as long as you stay here on eNCA.